It's the 24th of February of the year 2030. At 0500 hours, Russian rocket and artillery forces in the Karelian Isthmus light up the pre-dawn sky. Iskander ballistic missiles erupt from ground launchers, as sea-based Kalibrs burst forth from launch tubes. High above, lumbering Tupolev bombers unleash their subsonic payloads. While MiG-31 interceptors sling hypersonic Kinzhal daggers. The targets? Command centers, communication relays, radars, airfields, the eyes, ears, and central nervous system of the Finnish Defense Forces. Circling above the din of battle and keeping a watchful eye are pairs of Sukhoi 57s. For this simulation, we'll presume the Russians are able to equip 2 aviation regiments with their latest fighter by the year 2030, one at Pushkin, one at Besoviets. Meanwhile, F-35s, freshly procured in Finland's HX fighter program, monitor the enormous flurry of activity coming across the border and relay the information to the forces below. The Russian invasion has begun, the first ballistic missiles already screaming overhead, enemy aircraft surely to follow. Let's keep a close eye on both 5th generation aircraft in this hypothetical operation. First, a huge thanks to our sponsor, Supremacy, World War III. If you enjoyed the sort of large-scale modern warfare we simulate on this channel, then you'll enjoy Supremacy, World War III, a free online PvP strategy game where you can lead your nation against up to 99 other players in real-time campaigns lasting weeks. Choose your strategy and build your military accordingly with over 100 modern weapon systems based on real-world platforms. Equip your forces with the latest tanks, fighter jets, and warships. Forge alliances and wage war on your enemies. Conquer the world. I really like the coalition building aspect of the game. You can coordinate with other players to create multi-front offensives and achieve victories that no single nation can pull off alone. Supremacy World War III is fully cross-platform on PC and mobile, so you can jump back into the same campaign from anywhere on any device. And for a limited time, HypOps viewers get an exclusive starter pack containing this season's elite Railgun unit, worth $40 in value for free when you sign up using our link in the description box below. This offer is only valid for the next 30 days, so pick your country and fight your way to victory today. Let's take a moment to set the stage. Following the Finnish bid to join NATO, diplomatic relations between Russia and Finland rapidly break down. Russia refuses to accept Finland as a member of NATO, as this would significantly expand the shared border between the two sides and bring the alliance to within a stone's throw of the Russian city of St. Petersburg. In reaction to these events, the Kremlin has decided that the only remaining option is a quick and decisive war against Finland, another special military operation, where Russian ground forces will advance north, then west along the Viborg-Hamina route in order to rapidly encircle and capture the Finnish capital of Helsinki. There, they intend to install a pro-Russian puppet government and reverse course on Finland's western-facing policies, including their attempts to join NATO. Hang on, isn't Finland already a part of NATO? Yes. When work first began on the scenario during the spring of 2022, Finland was in serious talks to join NATO but had not yet begun their application process. Since then, events have moved at a lightning pace, and NATO membership was officially conferred to Finland just a year later in April of 2023. So in order to study a Russian air campaign against an isolated Finland, we are going to have to hop over to an alternative timeline, to the HCU. The main difference in this universe being that Finland tries to maintain its neutrality in spite of recent Russian aggression. In this worst-case timeline, Finland delays its bid to join NATO until the end of the decade and is not yet a member of the alliance by the year 2030. Even as Russian forces begin building up for the attack, Finland finds itself isolated with no allies willing to intervene in the event of war and only neighboring Sweden willing to provide military intelligence. Militarily, we'll assume the Finnish Defense Forces continue to develop along projected lines. Here are the Finnish forces taking part in the simulation. Our primary focus will be on the air campaign, so I've included only the elements relevant to the air war. Given Finland's recent increase in defense spending, we'll assume their HX fighter program continues on pace and the last of the 64 F-35s are brought in on the eve of war. This is how things look for the Russian side. I need to emphasize that I've made optimistic assumptions for Red Team. For example, we'll presume the Russians have managed to completely replace their destroyed aircraft and replenish their missile stockpile over the coming decade. This will be an impressive feat in itself, given the current state of the Russian Air Force. Similarly, we'll assume the Russians are able to field 2 aviation regiments of Su-57s and equip them with high-end K-77M missiles currently under development. Again, generous. As of the time of writing, the evidence suggests that the Su-57 has a limited operational capability and may be flying a handful of combat missions, always within the safety of Russian-controlled airspace. As for air-to-air missiles, currently we see Russian air patrols phasing out the older R-27Ms, with newer, more capable R-77s and R-37s trickling into usage, which are still one tier below the hypothetical K-77Ms which I've given the Russians for this scenario. There are numerous other assumptions made in the creation of this simulation, but in the interest of keeping this section under the hour mark, we'll save the full-length briefing as a future addendum video on the second channel. Overall, the Russians should be very happy if their air force looks anything like this by the year 2030. As for Finland, I've essentially thrown at them the hardest possible test. This will actually be a two-part exam. Part 1 is the current Russian air offensive into Finnish airspace. In Part 2, the Finns will go on the counterattack and attempt to strike critical Russian infrastructure, first with long-range standoff weapons, and then again using short-range munitions which will force the F-35s to get up close and penetrate into the Russian integrated air defenses. Okay, now that you have the syllabus, let's dive back in. The Russian air campaign kicks off with a massive long-range missile barrage. Across the battlefield, bombers, warships, and ground-based systems launch hundreds of precision-guided munitions, attempting to decapitate Finnish defenses in a single stroke. The leading edge of the attack are several dozen hypersonic ballistic missiles. Traveling at over Mach 5, these weapons are able to cross the breadth of Finland in under 10 minutes to strike targets deep in the interior. Let's zoom in on Tampere-Pirkkala Airport in southern Finland. The majority of Russian hypersonics are aimed at airbases like this one. Of immediate note are the runways and access points. Inflict enough damage to runway infrastructure and the F-35 squadron baster will be effectively grounded for at least a few hours. Stuck on the tarmac, they'll make easy targets for follow-up strikes. Missiles enter terminal approach, screaming back down through the atmosphere at thousands of kilometers an hour as they close in for the kill. I've positioned a high-end David Sling missile battery besides this airbase. Jointly developed between Israel and the United States, this system was recently selected by Finland for its high-altitude air defense program and should be available for a 2030 scenario. Performance-wise, it is similar to the latest Patriot missile system, but with an upgraded ballistic missile defense capability. In this scenario, managing to intercept over 85% of these missiles under ideal conditions. Other Finnish air bases are under simultaneous attack, like Tampere. Kuopio air base is defended by another David Sling battery. A point of interest, you can see several F-35s managing to take off just ahead of the intercepts. It takes approximately 7 minutes for an Iskander or a Kinzhal missile traveling at Mach 6 to reach Kuopio from the Russian border. This should give enough warning for competent air crews to scramble additional aircraft off the runway ahead of the strike. Just as at Tampere, a few missiles slip through the defenses to strike runway infrastructure, but the damage inflicted is scattered and uneven, with large sections of runway completely intact. A fully loaded fighter jet needs just a 5,000-foot stretch of undamaged runway for takeoff, and that condition still exists at this airbase. So far, Red Team has been able to slow, but not stop, air combat operations at this location. Keep in mind, however, that ballistic missile defense is an expensive and limited capability. Each David Sling system can cover a radius of a few dozen kilometers around itself against ballistic missile attacks in their terminal descent phase. This is only a fraction of the theoretical range against, for example, a slow-moving aircraft. Only a handful of these very expensive SAM systems will be available to Finland. and the next location, Hali Air Base, is forced to go without. And gets comprehensively shut down. The Crotale and NASAMS systems in the vicinity are unable to intercept ballistic missiles, being designed for slower in-atmosphere threats such as cruise missiles and aircraft. You need a fast and maneuverable missile combined with a radar capable of tracking targets out at the edge of space to have any chance at an interception. Luckily for the Finns, the combat aircraft at Hali has long since been scattered to other locations. Dispersed to a constantly shifting network of road bases and civilian airfields, Finnish aircraft will need to stay ahead of Russia's ability to detect, track, and engage them while they are on the ground. As the ballistic missile attack begins winding down, the cruise missile strike comes to the fore. A few minutes earlier, large salvos of low-flying subsonic missiles were launched simultaneously from Russian aviation, surface, and subsurface assets. In total, over 250 cruise missiles across all platforms are expended in an attempt to overwhelm Finnish air defenses and strike crucial targets. The majority are again aimed at Finnish air bases. The emphasis this time is on destroying the combat aircraft themselves, the F-35s and F-A-18s, which should be grounded assuming the recent ballistic strike has gone according to plan. Facing this oncoming tidal wave are the various platforms that make up Finland's air defense network. Now, the main burden of cruise missile defense typically falls to the ground-based missile systems. The David Slings, NASAMS, and Crotale missile systems with the relatively large magazine depths, allowing the F-35s to save their very limited AMRAAMs for use against Russian aircraft. So this probably isn't the smartest idea. Why did I do it? Because it's pretty. There are also practical reasons why aircraft-based interception is less common. F-35 patrols are currently tasked with defensive counter-air. Their priority is to engage the Russian aircraft following immediately after these missile attacks. The F-35s want to maintain an ideal position for BVR combat, high up in the air to maximize potential energy, which can be converted into speed when going back downhill. You cannot do this while groveling near the surface hunting for cruise missiles. Another reason is that aircraft and ground-based interception do not mix well together. Finnish SAM batteries are unable to reliably pick out and intercept just the Russian cruise missiles in this chaos. This is an accident waiting to happen. Which is why I've limited aircraft-based interception to just the single flight of F-35s. Cruise missiles now converge from multiple directions towards Tampere Air Base, skimming just 50 meters above the ground, using the curvature of the Earth to hide from ground-based radar. I've further optimized this attack using terrain features to conceal the missiles from Finnish SAMs until the last possible moment. Take, for example, the David Sling system. Using the line of sight tool built into the command software, we can calculate how far out the radar on this system can see Russian cruise missiles flying at 50 meters above ground, represented by the blue shaded areas. Two major blind spots, here and here, represent hills blocking the radar's view. The Russians have shown themselves to be reasonably competent at planning attacks against fixed targets like airbases. Precisely 13 minutes ago, Russian submarines launched 24 Kalibrs at this specific angle in order to exploit these blind spots and minimize Finnish reaction time. Let's check it out. The NASAMS system is the first to open up, situated on a favorable hilltop facing the line of attack, raining down surface-launched AMRAAMs on the incoming Kalibrs. Other SAM systems quickly chime in, firing as soon as the cruise missiles come into view. The David Sling is among the last to respond. Positioned optimally to intercept overhead ballistic missiles, it is less well placed to take on low-flying cruise missiles popping up into view from the surrounding hills. Attention now shifts back towards the St. Petersburg direction, where a second salvo of cruise missiles is engaged in the same manner. The overall Finnish defensive response is excellent, with ground-based SAMs successfully intercepting 49 out of 49 Russian cruise missiles. But this was a near-run thing. Both NASAMS are completely spent, and the David Sling and Crotale are on their last dregs. Meanwhile, further up north at Kwapuo, the Russians find more success at overwhelming local air defenses. A total of 60 KH-101s and KH-555s are flung at this airbase. The David Sling system positioned here is already nearly tapped out, having expended most of its 48 Stunner missiles against the ballistic missile attack from earlier. A dozen missiles crash through, striking hangars, shelters, and SAM systems. Time to assess damages. 3 F-35s and 1 FA-18C Hornet were lost in this attack. An underappreciated fact is that the base infrastructure played a significant role in mitigating losses. Most of the fighter aircraft are kept in separate hardened shelters, each requiring a penetrating hit from a missile to destroy the aircraft inside. Losses would have been far worse if aircraft were kept out in the open, where even an indirect explosion can damage multiple airframes sitting on the tarmac. The attack takes a heavy toll on the exhausted defenses, with various SAMs losing radars, launchers, and the total destruction of the Crotale missile system. One important caveat about this result: I gave out the location of all Finnish SAMs to the Russian side ahead of time so they get incorporated into their strike plan. This is one of those optimistic assumptions I've given Red Team. Modern SAM systems are mobile and should be constantly relocating to avoid just such an attack. Destroying these mobile systems normally requires the Russians to be able to execute a kill chain quickly and efficiently, to be able to find, fix, track, target, and engage the SAM system before it can move again. The Russians have struggled with this sort of dynamic targeting in their recent and ongoing wars, often taking 24 hours or more to process targeting intelligence through their kill chain and into a missile strike. When the attack finally arrives, the target is frequently long gone, and the missile hits an empty field. Instead, the Russians have found most of their success attacking static sites such as airbases, barracks, and depots, targets that don't usually move. Pulling up to the wider map, we can tally up the losses to figure out the overall effect of the missile strikes. A handful of additional hits on Finnish aircraft and SAM systems scattered throughout the map, the worst of the losses happening at Kwapuo Airbase, which we've just witnessed. The Finnish radar network was badly mauled, but most of the losses were older Cold War era fixed sites. The newer mobile radars surviving much better, being able to pick up and relocate in the face of danger. More importantly, all Finnish air bases currently hosting fighter squadrons have managed to remain operational in the opening stage of the conflict. Finnish air defenses contributed heavily to this outcome, successfully intercepting 88% of Russian missiles in this attack. And although the Finnish Air Force has suffered a number of airframe losses, it remains sufficiently intact to perform its upcoming mission. As the dust from the missile attack begins to settle, Russian fighter jets start breaking off from the patrol routes and begin crossing the border en masse to commence offensive air operations. The current goal for the VKS is to neutralize the Finnish Air Force in the critical opening stages of the war, prevent the Finns from interfering with Russian ground forces which, as we speak, have begun their mechanized thrust towards Helsinki. To this end, the VKS has deployed over 350 modern combat aircraft across various air bases in Russia's western military district. Forming the backbone of this force are 4 squadrons of Su-35s, highly maneuverable and equipped with powerful engines. These formidable 4th generation aircraft are the workhorse of the VKS. Further bolstering the ranks are additional squadrons of Su-30s and Su-33s, and 2 squads of MiG-29Ks from the Naval Aviation Wing. All of these fighters are packing R-77-1s for BVR engagements, with modernized R-73s for close quarters fighting. Behind this line stand the grizzled veterans, venerable MiG-31s slinging enormous R-37 javelins. Held in reserve are 2 contingents of the elite guard, Su-57s wielding Russia's next-generation K-77 and K-74 missiles. These will be held back for the moment and won't be participating in the first wave, which will consist solely of 4th-generation aircraft. Finally, bringing up the rear are 24 Su-34Ms, Russia's premier fighter bomber, loaded up on all manner of ground attack missiles and bombs, ready to rain destruction on the targets below. The VKS might be able to take advantage of a unique opportunity. Finnish air defenses have been exhausted by the earlier missile attacks and most units are in the process of reloading. It can take a couple of hours to reload 16 new Stunner missiles back into a David Sling launcher to be able to fire again. This is a timing window where Russian aircraft can penetrate into Finnish airspace relatively unhindered by ground-based defenses. A chance to sweep the sky of F-35s, then proceed to strike bomb the still reloading SAMs and defenseless airbases. That's the game plan at least. Let's have a look. Almost immediately, the Russian plan is thrown in jeopardy. F-35s hold a critical advantage when it comes to seeing first and shooting first. Finnish AMRAAMs ring out into the dawn sky. From the Russian perspective, the thermal plumes from these missile launches are the first sign of the oncoming attack. Russian 4th Gen are not yet able to acquire the F-35s and must continue to close distance in order to launch their own missiles. AMRAAMs make their final approach. Frontline MiGs and Sukhois are forced onto the defensive, trading their altitude for speed, notching to defend against Finnish missiles as best as they can. Red Team pushes on, ramping back up to supersonic speed as quickly as possible. Finnish F-35s can typically launch a second uncontested salvo before Russian fighters can get close enough to respond. On paper, Russian R-77 missiles should have comparable range to Western AMRAAMs, its maximum radius depicted here. In reality, the reduced radar cross-section of the F-35 significantly degrades its effective range. The outdated PISA radars on Russian 4th Gen aircraft simply can't track the F-35s at this distance with any sort of accuracy, shrinking the R-77's theoretical range of 60 nautical miles down to a more practical range of about 20. More missiles inbound. Fighters again hit the deck, dodging and weaving, relying on aerodynamic supermaneuverability. Cabinia countermeasures blaring away. Remaining fighters form back up and finally get within range to launch a counterattack. Still struggling to generate a radar lock, Russian fighters extend their reach using onboard IRST sensors, guiding the missiles in with thermal imaging data. Still, passive infrared is a poor substitute for radar tracking, giving altitude and angle data but nothing about the distance to the enemy target. A crucial piece of information for calculating firing solutions. Making matters worse, most Russian missiles were fired at a low energy state when the parent aircraft was already going low and slow, having spent most of their altitude and speed just surviving Finnish AMRAAMs, greatly reducing missile performance. Finally, the R-77s themselves still need to spot the F-35s during their terminal guidance phase. Their onboard radar seekers also heavily degraded by the low RCS of the F-35. Frequently, the missiles detect the aircraft too late to make course corrections in time, and sail past. This is starting to look disastrous for Red Team. Finnish AMRAAMs launched at these ranges are tearing to the Russian fighters now, who, despite getting some shots off, are struggling to score hits in return. Most of the Russian missiles fired from beyond visual range are calculated to be low percentage shots. None of the R-77s in the first salvo find their mark. Replaying events, we see multiple aerial engagements playing out simultaneously across the front line. As the battle rages on, it becomes increasingly clear that these BVR fights are going decisively Finland's way. The differences in detection and engagement ranges are massive disadvantages for Russian fighters to overcome, requiring them to brave 2 to 3 salvos of Finnish missiles just to get into range. Only a quarter of Russian aircraft survive long enough to fire back. The F-35's emphasis on stealth has served it well so far. However, as Red Team continues to close the distance, Finnish stealth becomes less and less effective, allowing Russian fighters to fight back on a more equal footing and exploit various compromises in the F-35's design. Zooming back down to pick things back up, remaining Russian fighters lose additional flurries as they cross the 20-mile mark, the radars finally burning through Finnish stealth. Meanwhile, many F-35s find themselves in awkward positions, running low on munitions with no easy way to break off. Each F-35 can carry just 6 internal AMRAAMs while still preserving stealth, most of which has already been fired in their first 2 or 3 salvos. Now F-35s too must fight to survive, dodging and weaving against Russian missiles, pushing their airframes to the absolute limit. Another point against the F-35 is its aerodynamic performance. Speed and agility have been sacrificed in the name of stealth. It is likely slower and less maneuverable compared even to Russian 4th Gen fighters, who are specifically designed for this sort of low-speed, close-range combat. An R-77 gets through, scoring their first kill. Meanwhile, fast and high-flying MiG-31 interceptors charge into the fighting from further back. Equipped with old but powerful Zaslon M radars, they wait for the F-35s to reveal their less stealthy flank and rear angles, and hurl enormous R-37s whenever a Finnish fighter exposes themselves. Despite an impressive theoretical range of 400 kilometers, the software does not rate this missile particularly highly. Originally designed to attack tankers and AWACS aircraft across vast distances, the weapon is cumbersome and ill-suited for engaging highly maneuverable fighter jets. Still, they offer some value, forcing F-35s to burn energy and duck, making them more vulnerable to follow-up attacks. The dogfights are starting to peter out. A few remaining Russian fighters are up against F-35s that are almost out of missiles. Let's follow one of these fighters, an Su-30 with the call sign, Amy, the last survivor of our original 8, who has already dodged 6 AMRAAMs to get to this point, and is further blessed by the luckiest RNG sequence I've ever seen in a simulation. Amy is presented with a golden opportunity as she enters visual range, spotting several F-35s brought down low by the earlier fighting. She turns towards her targets as her radar warning receiver screams an incoming alarm. She twists and dodges another pair of AMRAAMs before unleashing a full broadside at point-blank range, downing the F-35 while taking a glancing blow in return. Let's play that back. This here is the last Finnish AMRAAM in a 50-mile radius. It detonates poorly, damaging the Sukhoi systems, but crucially leaves the airframe intact. Unpause. Shrugging off the hit, Amy continues to press the attack, launching missile after missile as F-35s desperately try to break off. She fires a heat-seeking Archer, which whips around and punches an incredibly expensive hole in a second F-35, who somehow also survives the impact. Undeterred, Amy lets loose with her remaining missiles, trying to finish off the wounded F-35 with her last Archer. Miss! This one gets spoofed by flares. In fact, the F-35s successfully defend against all 3 of her remaining missiles. Wounded and out of ammo, she breaks off, wheels around, and dashes for the safety of the Russian border. Incredibly, none of the F-35s nearby have a missile to spare, nor does anyone try to pick a gunfight against the Sukhoi. The nearby David Sling battery is still busy reloading. Nobody can stop her from going home. A distant F-35 tries to stop her and chucks his last couple of AMRAAMs at her on her way out. Launched at the limit of their range, the missiles bleed kinetic energy crossing almost 100 miles of distance. An exhausted Amy dives. The airframe shudders, threatening to come apart around her. Miss. Miss again. Her unreasonable luck comes through for her once again. Leaving the battle space, she limps her Sukhoi back across the Russian lines, towards Gromova where she is based, and lands a damaged aircraft. As she taxis towards the hangar for repair, she takes the moment for a quick cry in the cockpit, and to curse out her sadistic simulation creator, who really wants to send her back out again later. As the fighting enters a brief lull, both sides take a moment to catch their breath, to rearm and refuel ahead of the next sortie, giving us a moment to assess the damage. Red Team has suffered enormous losses in this first battle, their 4th generation aircraft severely outmatched by the F-35's ability to see and shoot first. The Russians were able to inflict the occasional loss back on the Finns, usually in the later stages of engagement, in desperate hand-to-hand fighting. None of the Russian fighters that got close enough to launch their own missile managed to make it back out, with the exception of callsign Amy, who is the major outlier of the scenario. In the final tally, the F-35 managed to achieve a kill-death ratio of over 20-1 against conventional Russian fighters. More importantly, Red Team never came close to achieving air superiority over the battle space. Their tactical strike campaign then also becomes a moot point, as Su-34 is forced to abort their bombing runs in the face of Finnish air dominance. I need to caution that the rate of losses is accelerated for the scenario and should more realistically take place over multiple hours and days. I just fed 5% of the Russian fixed-wing fleet into a grinder in under an hour, partly for demonstration purposes. Real-life militaries are more risk-averse and will adjust their strategy after the first few losses. On the other hand, it's kinda hard for me to talk about combat that isn't happening. Which is why in the next segment, Russia is doubling down instead and throwing in a second wave, this time with their vaunted Su-57 in the mix to try and even the odds. This video has had a difficult development cycle, as many of you are already aware. What started out as a brief demonstration of missile strike technology has grown quite a bit beyond that. After already spending far too long on this project, it's only recently that I've been able to accept that I could no longer fit what I wanted to show into a single 30-minute video, and that I would need to break this up into parts. Doing it this way also allows me to delve deeper, and lets me show off a few more aspects of the scenario. Now, I can already sense your very valid concern over the future uploading schedule. You'll be happy to hear that a lot of the simulating and recording work is already done for parts 2 and 3, and the next couple of videos should only take a few months each. Eventually, the plan is to stitch the individual parts back together into a feature-length video for proper viewing. I know I've been gone a long time. A lot of that time was spent behind the scenes quietly making improvements to the project, and I'm hopeful you'll see some of those improvements starting with these upcoming videos. Today's video also marks the end of the dry spell. The focus going forward will be on increasing video output while maintaining the same quality. I'm hoping to get back to a more reasonable uploading schedule, perhaps one major release every 4 months or so. And finally, to my viewers who stuck around, thank you for your incredible patience and support. This video is a major simplification of a complex scenario. For every variable I've managed to include, there are many more I've had to omit. Join me on my talk show, HypOps, Fox 2, where I host a roundtable discussion with various experts and discuss the many aspects of modern air operations that can't be replicated within a simulation. You might have noticed that today's video looks a whole lot prettier and has actual map textures. Huge thanks owed to Franz Rea, creator of the TacView engine, who personally helped me make these visual improvements. TacView is an extremely powerful flight analysis tool that's used by civilians and professionals alike, and it generates the 3D footage I use for these videos. Franz did not pay me to say that. The software is objectively good and deserves your support. Go check it out. I also need to give credit to Tommy Hamalainen, a reservist in the Finnish army. I built my scenario on top of his work and with his advice. If you want a hint on what the next video might look like, check out his blog where he pits the F-35 and other former HX fighter candidates against the VKS in offensive air operations. Apparently, his simulations indicate that competitors such as the French Rafale might be able to achieve similar results for less. He's made his scenario files available for download if you want to try them out, link below. A final thank you to Supremacy World War III for supporting the channel and making this video possible. Click the link in the description to claim your $40 starter pack, including this season's elite Railgun unit. This offer is only available for the next 30 days, so pick your country and fight your way to victory today.